Hello, hello, hello. This is AJT500 slash down to track 98 slash Louis Wonderwise slash Hilo, and it's that time again. It's the time for the anti-ticks for 2025. So I did one of these last year. That was the first one, and I'm going to try and do another one now. I am going to try and make this one a bit shorter probably than the last one, just because the last one was really peaking long, but also just because I think a lot of the seasonals unironically have gotten power crept by a lot of not necessarily free characters, but people like Eternals, Evokers, and people that you can just get on the gacha. Speaking of which, this is not going to be going over people on like Flash Fest and Leg Fest. This is mostly just for seasonals and like summons that are relevant. So we're pretty much just going to go through it. We're just going to go element by element, and I'm going to give like top 3 to 4 to 5 picks, something like that, per element as we go through. But I'm just going to talk about mostly just relevant people and summons. So we're going to start with fire, and let's just get into that. Okay, so let's see. So fire, again, I'm not going to really go into details about anyone that's not even somewhat relevant. So that's pretty much up to your own discretion if you care about someone that I don't really talk about. So this Percival, no. Vera, honestly, at this point, not really. Beatrix, no. Altair, no. Aglavale, I'm going to be real. I don't have this character. And I have seen this character in quite a bit of burst related things for like full auto and such. But honestly, I think this character is one of the biggest like possible skips you can do. Honestly, Fire has a lot of strong other characters that you can use, so that even though he's strong, and I'm sure he'll probably find some niche, and he could be potentially used in like Guild War scenarios, I don't see a situation where you absolutely need this character. And I haven't gotten into a situation myself where I'm like extremely adamant about getting this character myself. So I'm just gonna say for the most part skip. For the most part skip. But I do think that he has some merit. But I can't even really tell you that merit because again, I don't have him. Quatre, no. Azazel, no. Kumbira, only if you want this weapon, but honestly, now that Uel's in the game, I wouldn't even necessarily go for this, especially with the anti-ticks. Noah's kind of weird because Noah is good in a vacuum, but honestly, he's kind of in the same spot as Aglavale, where the only place I really see Noah show up now is in Hexa for fire, but you can survive without him if you have other characters. So I'm gonna say skip for him as well. Probably. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to recommend him. It's really hard to recommend him unless you just want to cover all your bases specifically for high level. You don't use this character for burst. You don't use him for full auto. And we don't even know when there's going to be another super ultimate raid. So it could be like a whole nother anti-ticks before we get another one. So nah. Okay. As over Noah. Io, no. Donwa, no. Tina, no. Nimine, no. Elmont, no. Silva, only for some full autos, but let's be honest, you're not really using her either. And like gold bar farming with Grand Order high level, but you can also make do without her because I've done so in Grand Order. So no. Anyo, no. Dorothy and Claudia, no. Skothok, no. Izmir, no. Nezha. Okay. Nezha is a very straightforward character. This is a character you get if you want very low button burst or mashing potential, or if you wanna be like Jim and go kill Hexa solo. That's pretty much what you use this character for. Honestly, pretty much the main thing with him is just pretty much he does get bonuses when they're primal allies in the party. Notably, this third one, which is triple attacks, because pretty much whenever he attacks, he also activates this nuke, which is a double hitting nuke, which just does a decent amount of damage. So you're getting a lot of nuke potential, especially in an element like fire that has Percival with tag team and Sun in it. You get a lot of damage just from him purely just auto attacking, which can be very good for Guild War scenarios. I've used him for bar farming scenarios, but you don't really use him for full auto, and I would say you don't even really use him for high level either, except for, like I said before, when you're trying to do like Hexa solo stuff like Jim. Other than that though, that's pretty much it. He's pretty much just... But honestly, if you have anything else more pressing in another element, you can kind of skip out on him too, because there are other options again in fire. There's so many different options in fire, especially another character that I'm going to talk about later. So I would say Nezha's on the radar, but I would say he's more on the radar for if you're trying to optimize like Guild War scenarios, or if you just want to cover all your bases again on fire, like you're a fire player and you want to get everything. That's what I would recommend for Nezha. Okay, third page. Ilsa, no. At this point, Medusa, no. You don't really use Medusa at all anymore. Song, no. Mimlamel, very small use cases. Usually pops up around whenever there's a new like story event to like OTK the boss. She's there, but honestly you can again survive without her. So no, not really needed. Nihon, no. Wamu, I'm gonna come back to in a second. Mirren, no. Kane, no. Although Kane does have a backline passive, this is another thing. This dispel cancel effect when backline, this can be useful. This can be useful for Guild War scenarios again, but you're pretty much getting this guy mostly just for his backline passive. So if you're willing to do that just for potential Guild War usage, then by all means. Okay, Wamu, I will admit when I'm wrong, but only so wrong. This character, in my opinion, is still not a 10 out of 10. But she is extremely geeking good. She is extremely geeking good. Honestly, the thing that makes Wamu very good is Wamu is pretty much the fire equivalent of Valentine's Cidala in Dark, but with like even more potency. I would say, because of the simple fact of pretty much the main gimmick with Wamu is if you get her HP over 60k, she'll have this move on turn start, where she has normal attack damage amplified, triple attack rate is boosted, and she does the flurry, right? She also always activates this move after she attacks as well. So that's where the Valentine's Cidala part comes in. But with this playing into it, she does a ton of damage, especially in an element like fire, where, like I said before, you have Percival, tag team, and Sun that you can all do in one turn, and stuff like and stuff just like Luchador bursting, just in general with that actual tag team, and all of this just lasts for one turn, and then you can always just press this move again if you need to after the first turn, and then after the triple attacks and she gets this, she can always just pop this after a couple turns as well, and this goes to the whole party, and this is a whole lot of extra damage as well. So Wamu is very freaking good for very low button. She's like pretty much a step up above Nezha, essentially, for that low button, super good burst that just plays into Fire's potential as well. She is by far the best character for Fire on this tick picket right now. If you don't have Wamu and you're trying to play Fire, you gotta get this character, bro. She's really good. Again, I'll admit when I'm wrong, but only so wrong. Still don't think she's a 10 out of 10, because I think the thing about it is she's still just like, in my opinion, I know some people were trying to sneak her into Fall Zero when she first came out. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Just leave her on the freaking PBHL mines. But she's very good for any type of bursting thing that you're doing with Fire. Very good. Very good in general. The one thing I will say with this HP though is you do have to play around it. It's not very necessarily easy to just get. There are things like Icarus Sword that a lot of people barred because it gives HP You do a lot of double agony stuff with her. You have to put her on defensive awakening. You need to give her plus marks, stuff like that, to really get that 60k HP. Or like purpering her. You can do all types of things like that to get her to 60k HP consistently. So just keep that in mind if you're planning to invest. But yeah, very good character. Very good character. Okay. Next, I'm just going to go over the summons real quick for fire. I think there's only one that's relevant. Do not get primals on this. Don't get Shiva either. None of these. Okay. I always forget this element is the one with Summer Belial. Summer Belial is still really kicking good. Summer Belial, he's still really kicking good. You still have this that can play into cats and like wind. Just in general, his call can still be situationally useful. So you can do that, but also just the fact that he gives you the counters can help for a myriad of OTK type situations, or just bursting situations where you need some extra damage. He can be incredibly useful for that. Incredibly useful for that. So Summer Belial, if you don't have this, can still be very, very good as a backline summon. Summer Cerberus is also good, but I would say she's very situationally good. I have this summon, but I don't have her maxed, and there have been a lot of times where I wanted her to be maxed, but I've still not pulled the trigger yet because I've always been able to like sneak out a way to make it work without her. So I would say she is very much a summon that you want if you really want to optimize fire. But if you have other pressing matters, even in other Ellies, you could probably pass. You can probably pass. I haven't seen a spot so far where she's absolutely necessary, and there's nothing comparable to a Summer Cerberus setup. So yeah. So that being said, like I said, I was gonna make this a faster one. I have a notepad here. For fire, my top recommendations for fire, honestly, is Wamdus number one. Wamdus number one. After that, I would actually probably say Summer Belial, just to have Summer Belial available to you, right? And then after that, I would say it's kind of a mix. I would say it's kind of a mix of Summer Cerberus. Summer Cerberus equals Nezha, I would say. Probably around there. Maybe you can kind of actually no. I'm gonna flip this. I'm gonna say Nezha is greater than or equal to Summer Cerberus. I would say that because I will say I've gotten a lot more use out of Nezha than I probably would have with Summer Cerberus. But if you don't think you need Nezha for anything, Summer Cerberus can be just used in any fire setup, whether or not you have Nezha or anything. So, especially as new characters come out, she will continue to be useful even once Nezha falls off. So I do think she's still relevant to talk about. After that, the last thing I would say is just Noah. But that is purely just a maybe. Maybe. If you really care about high level fire, then Noah can be useful. Other than that, nah, I probably wouldn't go for Noah. I would pick something else, even if it's in a different Ellie. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up fire, unironically. So we'll move on to the next Ellie. Okay, moving on. Alright, now we're going to do water. So, water, Izmir, no. Sandalphon, no. Europa, no. Rosetta, no. Hillel bin Shalem. Hillel bin Shalem. Now, Shalem is weird. I would say Shalem is one of those, are you going to play high-level water characters? Are you going to play high-level water? If you're going to play high-level water, she is still not technically needed. Because the thing about it is a lot of the stuff that Shalem did, you can kind of accomplish now with Yatima. You can kind of get by with Yatima and do like Yatima, Paella, and Hasilia for your comp. But she is still, I feel like Shalem just in general as a character is a very safety character. Her Earth version is like this too. She is the safety queen. So if you're trying to get your foot wet, unironically, no pun intended, but if you're trying to get your feet wet with high level content with water, she can help carry you through that. because she can just help you with like the debuffs. She can help you with the turn skip and letting the skill cooldowns come up. She can get the get out of jail free card with the can't act. She also just has free double Ogies. Free double Ogies, the double dispels, the double delays. She just helps with a lot of stuff in water. Main places she's getting used right now is Hexa, Fa Zero, and I've seen her in Belial full autos, so stuff like that. So she's still very useful, but I don't know if she's necessarily necessary if you have something pressing in other elements. But she's still a very, very viable pick for water, I would say. Very viable pick. If you care about high level. Full auto burst, not so much. Greya, no. Kalulu, no. Mirren, no. Siegfried, no. John, no. Although I will say for John, her weapon has been used in the past, but that is very specialty water stuff, and honestly, if you're getting invested in that, you probably already know what you're doing, you don't need my advice. Nier, honestly, no. Andira, no. Vasaraga, no. Arlamaya, no. Cagliostro, no. Sin, her weapon can be useful, but honestly, I don't think I would anti-tick just for this weapon, because you can honestly just use 2 tie-side bows instead. Vikala, no. Tefnut. Now Tefnut is good, but she's kind of in the same situation. I feel like her and Shalem kind of fight over the same spot, and then you also have Yatima, who just kind of eclipses both of them in that same spot as well. So she is good. She is kind of like an Ogi base unit. She has like the debuffs, stuff like this. One of the main things that she does as well is whenever she Ogies, she gives the person behind her, so in the next spot, like double strike, which can play directly into Paella, who is one of Water's strongest units. So she can be useful for that. She also was like a really heavy contender for Guild War scenarios for like the highest floor. But honestly, besides Guild War, I don't really know where else she's getting use right now if you have everything else available to you, aka Yatima, Paella, and Hasilia. If you have that comp already, you can just play that comp instead of using Tefnut, honestly. So I think you'd be fine if you have that other stuff and you don't care about Guild War, or more so you feel like you can wait and try and pick her up during summer itself for whenever Water Guild War comes back around. But she is a decent character nonetheless. Let me see who else. I will say also for Vikala, I've seen her start out in a lot of Hexa solos, I think for her just her debuff, but if you don't care about Hexa solos, you don't really use this character a lot. Diantha, no. Cassius is almost exclusively for Guild War preparation, where Guild War has already passed, and it's not always guaranteed that he's going to be useful for Guild War, but when he is useful for Guild War, he's pretty useful. But if you don't care about Guild War, you're not using that character anywhere else. Catura, and I'm going to go down to Lucio as well. I'm going to skip over Clarice, Fedial, Narmaya. Clarice does have a little bit of usage if you're trying to do anything off Ellie, because she does have the Sand Dolphin thing where it's like she can change the element to fire, but that's like a super optimization thing, so it's not something that you use a lot. That being said though, Catura and Lucio I feel like I always need to talk about them together because pretty much their entire existence is Hrace-Velger support. If you do not have Hrace-Velger, you don't really need these characters. I'm gonna be real. I would say Lucio has a little bit more usefulness though, because if you have the Exo Gun and you're trying to farm something like Mugen, you can use an Exo Gun setup for Lucio. Technically, I guess you could use it for Catura too, but Lucio is kind of just more generally useful to buffing your characters. So that's pretty much it. But honestly, if you're not using Hrace-Velger, these characters are pretty much useless. And honestly, as somebody who anti-ticks Lucio last year, I will tell you I've literally used that character 2 times since I got him last year. That was the biggest waste of my anti-ticks ever. So if you're not a Hrace-Velger player, do not get either one of these characters, and be real. Anila can be situationally useful for burst setups or full auto setups, mostly because she has like this skill right here where pretty much everybody just attacks with the tag team, but it needs conditions to get to it, so it's not immediate like something like Percival. So it's kind of harder to use her, and it's not always optimal, especially when you have other stronger units that can just burst off rip in water. So I would say consider at your own risk. She is kind of one of those characters that you get just to kind of fill out your roster if you are a water lord and you want to cover all bases. Summons, I don't remember if there's any relevant water summons. Oh, there are. There are. Okay, Tira, I will say you don't really use that much, honestly. She's very specialized. She's kind of in the same vein as Summer Cerberus in fire. There have been setups with Summer Tira, but I have never felt gated by not having this summon completed. So I feel like there's always options to get around using this character. On the other hand, Summer Bubs. Summer Bubs is a very useful summon. Summer Bubs' main gimmick is mostly that he changes the element of your MC. Essentially, your MC hits on element, but it's kind of like Kame hitting on element, where you're not actually going to get your Seraphic passive, but you can crit, which can play really well into something like Water, who is all built around crit, but also any elite. Just in general, you can use him in any elite. Another thing as well is at the end of the turn, he will also do a 2 mil hit nuke. So that can help with OTK situations, kind of in the same vein as Summer Belial. But I will say that this is almost more consistent if you only need that 2 mil damage, because you don't have to worry about anything like the opponent not hitting your characters or your characters dodging or anything like that, because you will always get that 2 mil plane damage at the end regardless. Other thing too is he does have a call where pretty much when the opponent uses a special attack, it'll remove a buff off of them, which can be useful as well. It did show up for some usage in Guild War, in the last Water Guild War, and again, you can use the summon in any element, so that could pop up in any Elements Guild War or just any scenario in general. So this summon, unironically, is really strong as just a backline passive to have. So that being said, recommendations for water. Whoops, need to go back here. Recommendations for water. I kind of forgot who I went over. Okay, Shalem is probably one of them. I would say Tefnut is one of them. So what I would say is, I would probably say, is it crazy for me to say Summer Bubs at the top? Is that crazy? I feel like he's the most universally useful out of all these things. He's probably the most universally useful. After that, I would say Summer Shalem, and then Tefnut. And then I would say at the bottom, I would say Summer Lucio is greater than or equal to Catura, because again, this is Race Velgar dependent. These two are Race Velgar dependent. If you're not using Race Velgar, these characters will almost never see play for you. So that's pretty much all I would say for recommendations for water. Honestly, that's probably still it. That's probably still it. And honestly, you can get by with not having all of this stuff. If you have everything else in water, that's the reason why I think Summer Bubs is actually at the top. And then I would say, Summer. I wouldn't even, honestly, I don't even know if I would put Summer Tira in this. I'll be real. I don't even know if I'd put her in here. Same thing with Anila. I don't even think, obviously I'm mentioning them, but I don't think they're worth being on that list. I'll be completely honest with you. But yeah, that's pretty much it for water then. Okay, let's move on to earth now. Water. Okay, earth. Vera, no. Monica, at this point, probably not. She's still good as a battery for Ogi stuff, but honestly, we have other Ogi characters that we can use, or people that we can just put in an Ogi comp. So nah. Vikala, no. Her weapon is kind of useful, but if you do have Valentine's Makara, you can kind of just use that weapon instead to be honest. So no, probably not. Rosetta, no. Dante is weird because Dante still sucks as a character, but this unique echo that he gets on people's triple attack is unique, and like nobody else has it in the element. So when it comes to like optimizing burst things, like short button bursts, he can be extremely useful, whether it's Guild War, whether it's events, whether it's like Wamdus, honors, whatever. He can be really good for that. But anything like full auto or high level, you're not using this character. So if you don't care about optimizing really short form bursts with Earth, he's a skip. But if you do care about that, then he's kind of really useful because no one else does his job. Medusa, no. Zedavos, no. Magisa, no. Anthuria and Taco, you only care about these weapons. But these weapons aren't like super necessary either. So, with your own discretion for those. Europa, no. Eustace, no. Silva, hey kid, you want to see a Leviathan Mare below 10 minutes? Hey kid, you want to see a Leviathan Mare below 8 minutes? This is your gal. Summer Silva is literally only useful for Leviathan Mare because she makes it so that when she swaps, she gives this passive that when there's a chain burst, it actually adds 2 to the chain burst, which makes it really easy to get rid of his shield, even though you don't line up Ogies. So this she can be really good for that. The other thing she can be used for is like, I guess technically Hexa or Fall Zero solos, where if you're using Ogi comp for that, she can pretty much do the same thing and just add extra damage there, and support. So that can be good. But if you don't care about those 3 things, then pass. Illnott, I've said before, this character is like a lurking legend, but I'm gonna be real, I didn't use this character like at all in the last year. So she is still lurking, but just not really used, I'll be real. Kukuru, honestly, at this point, she's still really good for Diaspora, but I would say you don't even really need her for Diaspora if you have other people. But she is still kind of the queen of Diaspora, in the sense that she's just really good for that fight. She's just really made for Diaspora. She's really good with that. But I would say overall, probably a pass. Raziel, Raziel's she's a funny gal. She's a funny gal because everybody was hyping up Raziel. Oh my gosh, she's so great. She's got all this good stuff. And then literally as soon as Valentine Mocker came out, everybody was like, please get Raziel off the party. Please get Raziel off the party. We don't actually want to deal with these stacks. We just didn't have anything else. So please get her off the party. Just use Valentine Mocker. That's pretty much how Raziel went down. In Fall Zero and kind of in Full Auto too. That being said, Raziel is incredibly annoying to use. To set up, pretty much her main thing is to use her big move at the end, and to get the most benefit out of her first 2 moves, she needs to build up 10 stacks of the red and yellow things, but they're based off of the initial skill colors of your front line, and then she gets a stack every time those skill colors are pressed 3 times. So if there's a red skill, every single time there are 3 red skills pressed, she goes up 1 stack. The annoying thing about it is, depending on what characters you're bringing, how many skills they have, and the borders of those skills, it can be incredibly annoying to try and get these up in any speedy fashion, because a lot of Earth's cooldowns are very long, and it can just take forever. So trying to get to this move can be really annoying. That being said though, her stuff is still really strong though. This move just in and of itself, these buffs are very strong. These 3 buffs are very strong. If she has 10 of the yellow stacks, the supplemental buff is very strong. This move is very decent because not only does it give these debuffs, but it also will auto cast once she has red stacks, and it dispels, which can be invaluable. To this point, I still think Raziel is like probably the one of a mandatory character if you're trying to bring something for like Tefnut full auto, because even though I've seen so many people bring stuff like Olivia and just try and muscle their way through the 50% defense up on Tefnut when she uses that one move, it's way better to just have Raziel just cancel it with this and then do full damage. So for full auto, she's still incredibly useful, not just for this, but also for this, because this is a ton of taking damage. This is also really good for Guild Wars situations as well. Last Guild Wars, she saw a lot of use with someone like Dante, who plays into this yellow stack, because they can get the yellow stacks to 10 on turn 1. She can give this supplemental to everyone on turn 1, and then you're also getting the extra echo from Dante as well, which can be very strong. This move, when you can use it, is incredibly powerful too. This does a lot of damage when you can actually use it, but getting to using it is the annoying part. And a big thing about Raziel too is she does have the Cane passive too, where she can get any effect from any type of weapon skill. So she can use, even though she is gun and staff, she can use like sword, ultimate, and stuff like that and still get the benefits of it. See, she's very flexible in that way, even though she's inflexible in like every other place. But Raziel is good. Honestly, I would say if you care about Earth, even though she is annoying to use, she is still very strong. Even if you have Valentine's Makara, the crazy part about it is you can just use them both together. So she is very, very strong. Just know going in that she is going to be a nightmare to use, especially if you're trying to do your own theory crafting. But she does have a lot of applicable places in the game right now, whether it's full auto, whether it's burst, whether it's high level. You can still take her into Hexa, you can still take her into Fall Zero, regardless of her restrictions. And she can perform very well in all forms of content. So right now she is just a very, very good character, even though she has a ton of restrictions. Okay, moving on. Manamel, this is purely an Earth optimization thing. Do you want the crest applicability from the backline? Because essentially she gives you crest even when she's a sub-ally. She gives you one crest at battle start, which means you can play into things like Mana Diver or any other character that might use crest in the future. Besides that, though, this character herself doesn't really get use. Jessica, no. Alexiel, no. Matera, no. Pholia is pretty much in the exact same. Her and Dante are pretty much partners in crime because they are the one trick ponies together. Pretty much the only thing Pholia has is this team-wide assassin. She also does technically have this that can lock down a boss, which can be very good for Guild War scenarios. I would say Dante's a little bit more useful just because Dante can be used in more forms of content, whereas she is almost exclusively to Guild War, where this is mostly the most useful. Or you can use her for like some story event bursts as well, but that's pretty much it. Besides that, though, the rest of her kit is seeking dog water, and it's a hot train mess. So it's really only for if you want to optimize for like Guild War, or if you just want to have her around when there's an Earth advantage story event. Clarice, no. Shalem. Okay, Shalem. The thing about Shalem is still good, and just like I said in her water version, she is the safety queen, but you don't really need this if you have everything else in Earth. The main places where you use Shalem, in my opinion, are Hexa, Fall Zero, and Belial, full auto, right? But honestly, Hexa, there are a myriad of different characters that you can use instead of Shalem, and Shalem is pretty slow, although very powerful in that fight. She deals with 2 mil hit triggers, and pretty much every mechanic that Hexa has to deal out, she can deal with it very effectively. So she makes it very safe, but she is slow. Fall Zero, it's pretty much the same thing. She completely counters Fall Zero on pretty much everything that he can do, but she is slower than everybody else. AKA like Raziel, Makara, other characters like that, right? But she is the safety queen. The same thing with Belial. Belial full auto, this move pretty much makes it so that half of the things Belial does, she just takes all the damage, and she takes less than three-digit hits on whatever he does, whether it's a special attack or whatever. Incredibly useful for that full auto and just lining up things for that full auto. But Makara exists now, and you can use Makara instead. So if you have Makara, she pretty much if you have Makara, she outs Shalem out of Fa Zero and Belial. And if you have pretty much anybody else, pretty much if you have Kame and like any other 2 characters, you can pretty much do Hexa with Earth. So you don't necessarily need Shalem for that. So she is kind of a future-proofing thing, just in case she ever comes up if you need safety. I would say the more applicable thing for Shalem at this point is actually her weapon, where her weapon gives these boosts to CA specs and the special CA damage cap. Honestly, you can live without this too, but this is very good for Ogi comps if that's something you're interested in. But honestly, if you don't have Andromeda, you're probably not even going to really use this anyway, because you're probably just going to be using Hunting and not playing Ogi, so not really needed. So this is a very luxury character just in general, and a very luxury weapon. That's what I would say. Narmaya, still unironically probably our best burst unit. Just for on-demand burst, probably still our best burst unit when it comes to like assassin modifiers and stuff like that. But she's very situational. Honestly, outside of very situational burst things or like Guild War, the only place that Narmaya really gets used is in most people's 3-turn Ultimate Bahamut high level full auto for like your daily gold bars. If you don't care about that, if you have another element that can handle that, you don't really need this character. As for summons for Earth, I think there's only one. Well, technically there's 2, but there's only one that matters. There's Freyr too, but Mandrake is still very, very strong. Very, very strong. I will say Mandrake's usefulness has dropped a bit with Valentine's Makara, because one of the main things that she has this Dispel Cancel, and when she gets leveled up, she gets the strength effect. But Makara gives Dispel Cancel to the whole party on her S3 now too, so you don't technically need this for it. But what I will say is that strength effect is still incredibly useful. I remember when I tested my Bubs full auto, I actually realized that interaction, and I took out Mandrake in favor for Orologia, but I actually still did less damage because that strength buff was just so powerful from Mandrake. So it is still very good to have her as a backlane passive, and if you're not using Makara in something, whether it's burst or whatever, she just, you obviously want both of those. So she's still very, very strong. So for Earth recommendations, what I would say, honestly, I would say first and foremost, I would say Raziel. I think Raziel, despite all her shortcomings, is still probably the best pick you can pick on this ticket. After that, I would actually say Summer Mandrake. This is like the year of the summons, dude. They're still the best things out of these picks, honestly. Summer Mandrake. After that, I would actually say Dante is greater than or equal to Pholia, purely because these two go together. Like I said before, they're partners in crime for bursts, but outside of very specific bursting scenarios, you don't use either one of those characters. But I will say Dante has a little bit more of a lead just because his Echo is universally useful as long as they can triple attack, whereas Pholia, her assassin, matters a little bit less. After that, I would say Shalem and kinda Narmaya. I wouldn't even say these are like greater than or equal to. They're just kind of like, if you want high level safety queen, get Shalem. If you want Narmaya, if you want a burster, or if you want to do a faster ultimate Bahamut high level full auto, then you have Narmaya. That's pretty much it for these picks, I think, for what I'd recommend. So that being said, we move on to the next LE. Okay, next, move on to win. Okay, Saruel, no. Yingwei, no. Eliza is purely like, I'm gonna say this about a lot of characters in Win, but if you don't care about Guild War and you don't care about Siegfried, no. This character like literally never sees use outside of those two things. And I would say even in Siegfried, it's arguable whether or not you actually need this character or not. And Guild War is also arguable. It's pretty much you're taking a chance on maybe she'll be useful for some type of bursting thing. Other than that, probably skip. Xion, honestly, I don't really think is that crazy. I'm gonna be real. I got this character on my scam and I tried her in Siegfried, and it feels actually worse than the comp I was using before. So, yeah, I'm not really feeling Shion. I don't really think she's that great, but honestly, I think still, Siegfried and Guild War is probably the places you're gonna use her, just because she has like the double dispel. John, no. Grimnir, still okay, but you don't really use him anywhere. Pretty much the thing about it is he still just has the guaranteed triple attack and flurry. That's pretty much it. But there are other characters that you can use in Wind nowadays. Anila has the same thing as Halloween Dante, just in Wind, where she has the unique triple attack. So if you care about optimizing anything that could use triple attacks, she can be useful for like Guild War, Burst, whatever. She can be useful for that. Otherwise, if you don't care about optimizing Wind like that, just pass. She doesn't get used any other place. Lich. Lich is still decent, but I would say Lich has fallen off quite a bit. She did see some use in the last Guild War, so I will say she still has Guild War acclibility, however you say that word. She can still be acclible in Guild War, but otherwise, the only place I use this character now is in my Yggdrasil M3 full auto. Other than that, all my other wind related stuff, I don't use this character. I still think she's I do use her in Siegfried, actually. I still do use her in Siegfried. So I guess if you care about Siegfried, she is good. And I would actually put her above Shion and Eliza in that scenario, because she can be used in Guild War, Siegfried, and Yggdrasil. So she can be useful in that. But if you don't care about those three things, kinda less of a priority nowadays, but she is still a good option just to have around in Wind. But if you have more pressing things and other elements, I would probably go for those instead. Vampy, on the other hand, Vampy is pretty much good for any type of like bursting or full auto. She can still be useful. She has a ton of buffs right here on her S2. She also has this can't act as well, plus just these debuffs, which can be incredibly useful for getting bosses where you need them to be. She also continuously uses this for a period of time where it gives her the assassin autos, which is a ton of damage as well. Very strong character for full auto and bursting as well. Not really high level nowadays, but honestly, anything that's not like Hexa or Fall, you pretty much bring her to, including Guild War as well. And I guess the only other place is not Siegfried. I don't really see her in Siegfried, but anything else, you're bringing her. Very good for full auto and bursting scenarios. Midian, no. Eustace, no. I'm pretty sure Eustace was used a little bit in Fa 0, but I think there's other options now. Vayne, purely for backline passive, purely for this wind defense. Other than that, you're not using this character. Creepy Claw, I think at this point is not even really being used anymore, so I don't know if I would even get him just for that weapon either. Sandolphin, I don't have this character. I don't even know what he does, and I haven't felt the need to need him, so pass. Korua, no. I'm gonna come back to Galleon. Siegfried, no. UL, no. Albert, no. Okay, so Galleon. Now, I already know that a lot of people are Galleon glazers, whether because they love, the voluptuousness of Galleon, or just because, they really liked her when she came out. But honestly, this character, I literally do not use this character except for Siegfried and Guild War. If you do not care about those two things, then this character is not useless in the current metagame. The main thing that she has is this massive boost to MC, which is really, really strong. Don't get it twisted. But do you need that for the vast majority of content? No. It doesn't even always technically line up, especially if you have Ogi and stuff. This doesn't always line up like on full auto how you may want it to. But Galleon is one of those characters where if you are interested in wind, if you want to future-proof your wind, you definitely want this character in some way, shape, or form, whether you get her here or like on Summer or whatever. Definitely want this character because she is probably like the future of Wind's burst, or at least she's probably going to help with it. Anything that's MC related for sure, just very strong for Guild War scenarios and very good for like not Hexa, Siegfried. But it's just like there's really just no other place where I use this character. I really don't. I'll be honest with you. I just really just don't. I just don't use this character. The one thing I will say about Galleon though is she does come with the Galleon float, which is their tempering weapon, which is very good, and it can replace the beaks. But at the same time, you can just still continue to use beaks. The damage is pretty similar, I would say. So the thing about it is Galleon is a recommend, but just know that she is like a specialized unit. She is the type of unit where, hey, I want to be like that theory crafting wind guy. I want to try and figure out stuff nobody else has figured out with the wind. This is like that character for that. Otherwise, just Guild War, just Siegfried. I'm gonna be real. Summons for wind. Let me see. I believe there's one. Yes, there's one. Oh, two. Honestly, there's one though. I haven't seen people really use Rose Queen in a hot minute. Rose Queen is technically you guys' mammoth tier summon, even though you guys do have Owlcat. This is like kind of just better in most scenarios. But I really don't see people using this just because wind kind of sucks at bursting. That's the thing. And that's kind of the issue with Galleon as well, is that even though she's really good, it's just nobody's really bursting with wind right now. So it's hard to recommend her for that and Rose Queen for her purpose, because you just don't really burst in wind. It's almost all full auto or Oki spam. You don't really burst, you don't really even auto attack half the time. So it's just like a lot of your damage comes from Ogies or like skill damage in wind. That's just pretty much how it is. So this, even though it's good, uses a lot of usefulness just because of the element that it's in. Summer Tiamat, on the other hand, Summer Tiamat does have this veil. I forget what else she gives on FLB, but she gives this veil, which can be very useful for Guild War scenarios or just anything that you might be trying to, again, burst with wind that could debuff you early on, or just in general, because it'll just stay on as long as you don't get dispelled. But yeah, I mean, again, you don't really burst in wind. You don't really burst in wind, so it's very hard to recommend it. Sorry, I went back. It's very hard to recommend it. So what I would say, honestly, for wind recommendations, what I would say is I would say Galleon first. I would say Galleon first just because Galleon is good. She's future-proofing your wind, and she comes with a very useful weapon. A weapon, by the way, mind you, that you may even want two of. So getting one here and then still needing another one, like you got to start somewhere, right? So getting it here is good. After that, I would say Vampy is next. I'd say Vampy is next. And then after that, I would probably still say Lich. Is probably next. And then after Lich, I would do Anila. Anila is greater than or equal to Summer Tiamat. Is what I would do next. Just because Anila does have the echo, but Tiamat does have the veil. But it's just wind burst just kind of sucks in general right now, so it's really hard to recommend you anything that's not a high level or a full auto unit. I'll be real. So yeah, that's what I would say for wind recommendations. Okay, moving on for wind. Light. Melissa Bell, no. Frozen Media, no. Strum, no. Sarawell, I have seen for like some Ogi stuff, but I think he's kind of been passed now that we have like Foon and Zooey, so he matters a lot less. But if you're interested in like rounding out completely your Ogi compositions, he could be useful for that. Otherwise, pass. Delaphil, pass. Charlotta, no. Halmal, no. Zeta, no. Hellas, no. Now I say no. Matera, no. Urius, no. Halasina, no. Kukuro, no. Lily, no. Shiva, no. Mahira has like two use cases. She's the wild card for Guild War. She could be useful. She was useful before. She could be useful again. but that is a complete wild card. The other thing is I have seen her in some Futsu Fa Zero stuff, but honestly, if you want to do that, you probably already know that you need this character or you don't need this character, so you probably don't need me to tell you about her. Florence, do you care about Guild War? Do you care about Guild War? That's pretty much it. Do you care about the potential of bursting on Guild War? If you don't care about the potential of bursting on Guild War, honestly, she gets used literally nowhere else. So, if you don't care about bursting on Guild War, or just like some weird offhand bursting that you could just do for fun and light, then I would pass on this character. Horus. Horus is good. Horus is good, but the thing about Horus is, do you care about light high level? And when I say light high level, I mean specifically V2 light high level. I don't even mean Guild War. Because the thing about it is this character is very good, but she functions a lot off of like the Fated Chain bar. She needs the Fated Chain bar to really function to her maximum, which means you need to be playing in V2. So if you're not playing V2 Ogi stuff, aka stuff like Hexa and Fa Zero, this character, while she is nigh irreplaceable right now in those comps, if you do not care about that, she does not really matter for anything else. I'll be completely honest with you. But she is very, very, like I said, nigh irreplaceable in those comps right now. So if you care about high level light, then you want this character. That being said, on the flip side, Zooey is also in that high level, if she'll load, she is also in that high level Ogi category. But Zooey got crept nigh immediately by Funfun Transcendence. So the question is, do you want to transcend Funfun? If you do not want to transcend Funfun, she is like your best third for the Cosmos Horus third comp. If you have Funfun though, Funfun can be more useful and free in that slot instead of getting Zooey. The other thing about Zooey though is she does have this weapon that can be useful for high level stuff, just throwing this weapon in. So maybe if you care about high level light, you may want to get her not only just to make sure you cover all your bases, but also just to get access to her weapon so you can put it in your grid. So she can be useful for that, but the real question is, first of all, do you want to play high level light? If you don't care about high level light with the Ogi comp, then you don't really care about Zooey. You probably don't even really care about her weapon either. After you've answered that question, if you do care about high level light, do you care about transcending Funfun, or have you already transcended Funfun? If you already have 150 Funfun, then you can probably pass unless you want the weapon or you just want to round out your roster. Next, Mary No. Illnott, still very strong for auto attacks. She can be used for high level and she'll probably show up in Guild War as well. Very good. Very good for auto attack, like full auto. You can also use her for like burst stuff, but usually you use, some more a tighter type burst setup than her. She's more so just that consistent full auto damage. She also does give like the veil on this, and she has delay on this and dispel, which can be really good, and it activates twice. So she's very, very strong for a multitude of scenarios. Aglavale, no. Fastiva, do you care about the backline passive? If you don't care about the backline passive, this one right here where they activate infinite love, this thing, where they give this to everyone, even if they're in the backline. But I will say, I have seen in recent times that people have been swapping out Fastiva for Silva, light Silva, instead of this character, so you can probably make do with Silva as well if you don't have this character. And for Funfun comps, for the Ogi comps, Silva might actually be better just because she gives you an extra hit from the back line for things like hit triggers in Fa Zero. Ragazzo, I do not have this character. I know there's been a lot of talk about this character being potentially used for Guild War. I can definitely see it, but I also don't know if I would necessarily risk it, just because this character, while he is very good, there are usually replacements. Now granted, there could be no replacement in Guild War, but again, that's always a chance. There's always a chance. And I would always say in Guild War 2, there's always some way you can make it do, even if it is slower. But in general, he has a very well-rounded kit. And if you like Ragazzo, he's a pretty good character that you can use in a multitude of content. He's mostly like full auto though, not really high level. Um, Monica. Monica is one of those characters that you just kind of is nice to have for her substitute and her her dodge rate booster thing. But other than that, really not using this character. Zal, she does have like this supplement light allies crit damage, and she also has this debuff immunity, the Veil, even when she's a sub ally that can be useful in like a Guild War scenario. But honestly, I would not get this character just for that. I'm gonna be real. Mugen, I'll come back to you. Wellness, no. Narmaya is pretty much in the same boat as Fastiva, but I would say Narmaya is a little bit more useful just because of this takes this thing that she does from the backline. 10% booster charge bar on MC and playing damage to a foe. This is very, very good for any of those OGI high level comps. This character, unlike Fastiva, is almost always in those high level comps because of that passive. So if you care about that, or if you care about like some type of OGI OCK, she is very useful for that. She is very useful for that. So if you care about those things, she's good. Going back up to Mugen. Mugen is still very burst heavy, very good for burst. Him and Nihon, they've kind of dropped Florence at this point, but they are still powerhouses when it comes to tag teaming for burst. They are very, very good. I will say that you don't always bring Mugen now for just full autos, stuff like that, but he is still incredibly strong. This buff is still very good. This buff is very good, and him being able to substitute and then not die with this one is very, very strong. He also has this counter as well. Just very, very good. And again, this crit is also 100%, so it plays into EFS as well, and just light crit in general for bursting, so you don't necessarily need to have 100% crit in your grid. You can just get it from him and then play into that amp, which is very, very strong. So he's very good, will almost certainly still be used in Guild War, at least for the lower floors. Again, very strong burst character. Very strong burst character. Now Summons, I believe there is only one. Yeah, only one that matters. Summer Mars. Summer Mars is very good. She is kind of like Mugen on crack, only as a summon, because she has this debuff immunity at battle start, but she also, when you FLB her, she gives you 100% crit for like 3 turns as well. So essentially now you can do Mugen's thing without having to press anything, just coming in, which is also one of the reasons why Mugen is a little bit less of a priority now, just because she exists. She also has a very great call with skill damage up, and she gives echo as well, so she is very good if you care about bursting in light, whether it be for Guild War or just in general. Summer Mars is a very, very strong pickup, and you'll definitely want her. So that all being said, for light, the recommendations are, I would say actually, dude, it's really the year of the summons. I would actually go as far to say Mugen is probably equal to Summer Mars. I would go as far as to say that Mugen is still very strong, and you probably want both. I guess what I would probably put actually is Mugen is greater than or equal to Summer Mars, because they kind of fill the same role, but Mugen is still a character and he still does have uses outside of what Mars can do. But Mars is also just incredibly strong for Light's burst in the same vein as Mugen. After that, I would actually probably say Illnott is next. Illnott is still very strong, and you use her in most of your full auto light things nowadays, just because of her passive, where I mean, for one thing, this thing just does a ton of deking damage by itself, but pretty much she has the Hasalia thing, where when people auto attack, they just nuke for free afterwards, which is incredibly strong. After that, I would say probably, if you care about high level light, Horus next. Otherwise, she matters a lot less because she's really only for high level. After Horus, I would say you have kind of some options. I would say probably, unironically, Narmaya. You caught a Narmaya after that, and then I would probably say maybe like Fastiva, and then Zooey. pretty much kind of in that order, because I would say just transcend your Foom Foom. But if you don't want to transcend your Foom Foom for whatever reason, Zooey can be useful there. But yeah, that's pretty much the picks for light. Pretty much the picks for light. Yeah. Oh, we're good. Moving on to the next one. Okay, let's do dark. The final frontier. Okay, De La Phil is good, but I don't think I would get her on this ticket personally. She's a very defensive unit. You can use her in a myriad of things, but she's almost never needed, I would say. Satyr is pretty good. Satyr is good in pretty much anything that is full auto heavy that's kind of in like a higher level range, if that makes sense. So pretty much what I'm saying is Luminera M3, the CCW raid, and what's the other thing? Cosmos. She's very good in all three of those. She's very tanky with the substitute. She gives you the skill specs, plus she heals, and she does this massive nuke, and she'll auto activate this nuke. Also, this debuff makes it so that you can remove buffs when you do skill damage, and there's a lot of skill damage going out in dark nowadays, and everybody can play into that, which is very, very, very good. And she'll auto activate this at the end of turn, and it gets boosted by how many primal allies are in the party, so it can do a ton of damage. She's very good as a character, whether it's full auto or manual, for those three raids that I mentioned before. Her weapon can also low-key be used as well for this healing cap, the HP, the progression, and the skill damage cap. You can kind of put this in place of a second Fedial Spine if you need a slightly more defensive option. So Satyr, very good. Yggdrasil, no. Rosetta, no. Ilsa is still very, very strong. She also has this 100% crit, like how Mugen does in light, so she's very good for that. You don't play crit as much in dark, but crit is still just damage, so it's nice. She also has this where she can get the extra strikes, and all of this stuff can go up like as she recasts it. But the thing about it too is when people die, she resets her skills, and she can get like higher levels of this as well, so she can get up to the quadruple strike. Very good there. Also guaranteed triple attacks, very good. Undying has come in useful many times. This is definitely your burst character, but this is your burst character if you want to press a button, most notably this button, because this button even matters less because of a Reshkagul, and this button you don't always need either. But mostly if you want to press a button for buffs, this is your character for those bursts. But that being said, she is mostly still only really used in things like Horus and Luo full autos right now. Other than that, she's only really used in bursts if you really need the damage. Otherwise, you pretty much just use Cidala, Bowman, and 6 to do any other bursting that you may need. So she's good for those full autos, but that's kind of it. And Guild War, good for that. Magus is pretty good if you want a skill damage character. She's kind of in the same Satyr thing, where she's good for Luminera full auto, she's good for the CCW raid, and she's good for Cosmos. Outside of that, you don't really use this character because you can just use burstier options, or you're playing high level. And while she can be used in high level, pretty much right now Dark doesn't really run her. Just in general for high level, like Hexa Fa 0, you don't really run this character in there. But she is very good for skill damage, just in general. She also has a ton of debuffs on this, and when she Ogies, she resets both of these skills so she can nuke even more, and she'll recast this nuke on whenever this buff is up on the boss. She does lower her HP when this is up on the boss, though, at the end of every turn. Still, regardless, very good skill damage character. Holocena, only if you care about some weird Hexa solo. Otherwise, pass. Cagliostro, no. Clarice, no. Anthuria, no. Magisa, no. Kubiton, no. Hecate, I think Hecate has some uses. But I'll be completely honest. Even as a Zosimos haver, I have not felt the absolute need to have this character. I want her, but I don't think she's absolutely necessary in any way, shape, or form. And I would go on a further limb to say if you do not have Zosimos or plan to get Zosimos, you can almost completely ignore this character because she is very crest focused. And you want to play her with Zosimos and you want that skill damage from Zosimos and that skill damage amp. Azusa, no. Tico is potion, pretty much it. Doesn't really get used anywhere else. Zooey, no. And third, or Amira, no. Meg, no. Tabina, not really for the character, more so for the weapon, but even the weapon doesn't really get used because you don't play Enmity Dark a lot like that anymore. Fiorito, no. Uni, no. Cidala, I'll come back to. Lady Greya, no. Donua, no. Vajra, no. Now, Cidala, I mentioned this way back in the fire section, but she and Wamdus are kind of like the same character, just in different Ellies. Pretty much the main thing is Cidala can just attack, and she'll do a nuke. That's pretty much the main thing. Most of her other skills don't really matter. It's just the fact that she can attack, and she does a nuke that, I think it's this one. Yeah, she does her S3 when she attacks, and she has that buff up, which you can do for, what is it, like 3 turns or something? Which can be very good for 0 button bursting, even if it takes multiple turns. She just debuffs the enemy and she does nuke damage, which is very, very strong. If you care about bursting in dark, if you care about Guild Wars scenarios, if you care about gold bar farming, anything like that, this character is right there. Yeah, so very good for that. I have seen people start to use her weapon a bit for some high level stuff, but it's mostly just for this healing cap. But I don't know if I would go for her just for the weapon, but if you don't have her, she is very good in other spots. As for summons for Dark, Sleepyhead is good. She gives this armored effect, but she also gives Veil when you uncap her. Very good. If you care about, I would say bursting in like Bahamut high level or Akasha. If that's what you care about, she can be used in stuff like Cosmos as well, just to make it so you take less damage. She also did see a little bit of use in Guild War just because of the Veil and to take less damage so you don't die when you're trying to burst. But other than that, she doesn't see a ton of use. But she is a very good situational summon just to have in Dark, especially if you're trying to burst with stuff like a Reshkagul. I went back to the homepage again. So, recommendations for Dark. I would say personally, Cidala is number 1. I know people will say that Ilsa is the best character, and I do think Ilsa is very, very, very strong. But the thing about it is purely because of the simple fact they're both burst characters, but there are a lot of situations where I mentioned before where the composition is Cidala, Bowman, and 6 to just press no buttons at all, and that doesn't require Ilsa. Pretty much, Cidala doesn't require Ilsa, but Ilsa you almost always have Cidala. That's the reason why I would put Cidala over Ilsa. Second, though, I would definitely put Ilsa. She is definitely very, very strong. If you ever get to the point where that comp of Cidala 6, Bowman doesn't have enough damage, you're bringing in Ilsa over like Bowman or 6. Guaranteed. Just so you can get extra damage on that burst. After that, I would actually put Sleepyhead, just because having Sleepyhead summon is very good for a multitude of bursts in Dark. After that, I would say Satyr is greater than or equal to Magus, right there, because purely this is pretty much the same. This is pretty much the same situation as Cidala and Ilsa, where you almost always use those characters together, but Satyr has more usefulness outside of Magus than I feel like Magus has outside of Satyr, if that makes sense. I feel like there's more places where you use Satyr than you use Magus, if you had to pick and choose between them. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the picks at that point. So again, these are the picks for each element right here. I'll leave these in the description as well. But that's pretty much it for this video on the anti-ticks. Hopefully this helps you choose. If you have any more specific questions, you can leave them in the comments and I'll try and answer them. But that's pretty much the picks for this year. This year is very every single one of these had a summon that is very useful to have. So this is like the year of the summons. I feel, like I said at the start, I feel like a lot of these summer unit, or not summer, holiday units are kind of falling off in favor of these either Eternals, Gala characters, evokers, stuff like that is taking a lot of precedence over a lot of these seasonal characters. But there are still some good picks in there, and there are still some good summons as well. So again, hopefully this helps you. Hopefully this helps make up your mind if you're stuck between anything. But that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.